Welcome to Moonbeaming, a podcast about creativity, magic, tarot, lunar living, and more. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I am so happy you are here today. We've really got an action-packed week, so I wanted to talk a bit about what's going on in the moon and with Mercury before we dive into the main part of the podcast, which is about protection magic, or just some thoughts on protection magic. All right, so here's a little lunar report of this week for the week of October 12th. The beginning of the week might start to feel intense as we go from a waning moon in Leo into a dark moon in Virgo. We'll be ending the week with a new moon in Libra. The beginning of the week could feel tense. There could be some anxiety. You might find yourself in some reactivity. So think about meeting yourself there with grace and surrender. Maybe you do some kind of energetic expression work like drawing or crying, or maybe you give yourself a massage. Maybe you just vent if that's what's going to help you. Sometimes during the dark moon time, I like to what I call angry clean, which is literally just me scrubbing the tub or the sink very vigorously while being a little bit angry, right? So it kind of moves the energy out there and dissipates it, and also, helps clean my house. Maybe you need to get rid of some objects or declutter this week, the beginning of this week. Maybe there needs to be cord cutting or some difficult conversations with yourself or other people. But be with yourself through any of this until you can settle into a place of more quiet, or what is underneath that more activated emotion, that more activated energy, into sort of a softer aspect of yourself, into a little bit more clarity. So you can ask yourself, what do you need? If you find yourself really tense, what do you need? What does that need? And then try to respond to that need. If the new moon is on Friday, then basically Tuesday to Thursday is where we might be feeling this dark moon time. It's a beautiful time for visioning. It's a beautiful time for dreaming. Let yourself get surreal. Let yourself get weird. Let your mind wander, or just simply rest. The other thing that happens this week is Mercury is retrograde in the sign of Scorpio on Tuesday. So this could be an opportunity to change how we relate to our subconscious, to transformation, to dive in with emotional patterns that maybe are a little bit ingrained. They can be engaged with in different ways that might loosen them out a little bit, loosen their grip upon our consciousness, our actions. Mercury is a psychopomp, which, apart from being a very cool word, means that psychopomps move in between different realms and in between different worlds. They move from life above ground into death underground. So they're moving. They're like an edge walker in a way. I really love this archetype of Mercury. Mercury is non-binary. Mercury can be sort of here and everywhere. Mercury obviously is the messenger. So sometimes I think of Mercury retrograde as our thoughts and our communication patterns, and maybe our thought patterns and maybe our communication patterns, and even our nervous system is in a different zone. Maybe it's in the underworld. Maybe it's moving somewhere else. Being in spaces of depth, maybe we are offered a chance to explore hidden impulses we have or different perspectives, right? Like in a lot of myths, when the heroine goes into the forest or descends into the underworld, that's the clue that there's going to be transformation through conflict, maybe through meeting certain monsters or simply visiting and being in different realms, right? Where things maybe look a little different. They're not sort of the usual, right? So I'm looking forward actually to doing some subconscious work, doing some shadow work while Mercury is retrograde this month. Think about what that could look like for you, being guided into different ways of speaking or thinking at this time, really acknowledging the ways in which you communicate to yourself, right? Think about the ways you communicate your presence, your identity, who you are in the world to yourself and to others, and just try to do something different. If usually you're a really big talker, hi, hello. Maybe you become a listener now. Maybe you explore ways of listening. Maybe you let other kinds of energies communicate to you. Plants, color, art, other things, right? Maybe you open up to different ways of listening. Of course, we know that there's an election coming up, so please make sure your voting plan is secure and everyone that you know also knows what to do. A lot of astrologers are saying that this Mercury retrograde is going to be pretty intense. We don't really know. So maybe back your files up, maybe go a little bit slow, maybe reread certain things, maybe pause before texting someone back if you're feeling really activated. The other thing you can do is you can make a Mercury retrograde log of like weird communications or tech breakdowns or anything really that happens to you this month, just to see how it's playing out with you. Personally, I don't mind Mercury retrograde. In my natal chart, Mercury is retrograde, so sweet things and opportunities end up happening for me at this time, or I'll get breakthroughs and inspirations and things like that. So I always think it's really important to check in with yourself and your experience of moons or transits or really any forking thing in the world, right? Make sure, like, how does this show up for you? How are you feeling? How are you dealing with this, right? Last but not least, this Friday, October 16th, we have the year's closest and the year's largest new moon in the sign of Libra. So we have another lunation beginning in the middle of the month. So thinking about the elements of this sign, we have cardinal air energy, can help us get focused, can help you begin different habits, can help you keep aligned, can help you considering other things or considering other people. I talk a bit more about the month of October a few episodes ago, so you can listen there to refresh, or if you haven't listened to it. Okay, so when I pulled the card of the week, it was one of those cards where I was like, oh, come on, like, really? Because we got the Two of Swords for this week. And for those of you who know a bit about different correlations of tarot cards, the Two of Swords correlates with the energy of the moon in Libra. So we have this new moon in Libra. Two of Swords is a really interesting, a really beautiful card. Twos are opportunities. Twos are new beginnings or the opportunity for a new beginning in some way forward. The Two of Swords is this invitation to be both and. It is a card around choice. And in particular this week, it can be a archetype of this belief that we have to be something different in order to get the thing we want, or we can't have this without doing this, or there's some kind of tension that might pop up for us around decisions we're making, where we feel like we could be like we're in between a rock and a hard place. And I want you, gentle listener, to remember what is a thought pattern that can be unraveled or be teased apart or addressed differently, right? Where are you setting yourself up for things you can't have or things you can't do because ... Really take the time to allow yourself to gain a different perspective around a choice you want to make. There is a solution there for you within you, and lean towards the glass being half full side. Sometimes Two of Swords resonates with that image for me as the glass half full, the glass half empty. It could be, quite frankly, that whatever decision you have to make this week or whatever direction you're moving in, it might just not feel completely amazing, or there could be some discomfort there. So think about what you need to do to be compassionate to yourself. Think about what you need to do to relate to yourself in a way that is going to make this choice, this step forward, this habit be the easiest it could be, the most filled with grace, the most in alignment with your intuition. Okay, so this week I wanted to talk a little bit about protection magic. I'm teaching a class on protection magic this coming Saturday, October 17th. The link for that will be in the show notes. The signups will end a couple days before on October 15th in the morning, so we can sort everyone out and send out all of the info before the class begins. So if you want to sign up, you can go to that link in the show notes. I wanted to talk about this subject because I'm pretty well versed in protection magic. It is definitely one of the baselines of a magical practice. Protection magic fundamentally is about keeping your energy safe, keeping your energy secure, keeping both your magic and your energy, your well-being, your thoughts protected, intact. This, of course, makes your energy stronger, and this, of course, also strengthens the effectiveness of your magic. Another reason why, witches are sort of well-versed in protection magic, and, I don't love to say this, but you get fluent in protection magic or energetic clearing skills because the more, I'm putting this in quotes, by the way, the more successful or the more visible, again, these are in quotes, right, we become, the more adversaries can pop up. And I'm using the term adversary both metaphorically and literally, right? For sensitive folks, this can drain our energy, right? If we have adversaries, if we have energetic drains on us, To be clear, I'm saying this both as a person who has been hexed over the years, also as a person who, the more I do things in the world, the more requests on my time there are, the more obligations I have, and quite frankly, the more nonsense I have to deal with, to be frank, the more nonsense I'm dealing with. So staying grounded, protected, focused, and energetically clear is really imperative. It's really, really imperative for our peace of mind, for our responses, for our work, for our life, for our relationships, right? So these are just a few of the reasons why one would want to have a protection magic practice, for lack of a better word. When I teach protection magic in the workshop I teach, I'm going to talk about this. There are different categories of protection magic. I will be covering those in greater depth there, but I just wanted to sort of cover them to get you thinking about the different forms of this kind of magic. There's what I call like preemptive protection magic. This is like everyday practices and exercises that one does to energetically charge oneself, to clear one's energy, to ground and protect one's energy. And this is what you do every day, just to sort of practice, just to be in your energy, just to get really well versed in the basics of how you function, of how your energy functions, how to protect it, how to clear it, right? Then, of course, there is this type of protection magic that I believe a lot of folks associate with it, with the theme of protection magic. There's, cord cuttings, bindings, clearings, other ways to repel and to clear unwanted energy or behavior from entering, or being in your sphere. And that's more like, we might call it reactive or responsive or protection defense magic, and that's the kind of magic that you're doing when stuff has already kind of happened, but it's not necessarily the kind of protection magic that one would be doing all of the time, right? Maybe that first category of energetic clearing, of energetic baseline practices would be the more everyday magical workings you would do around that. I talk a lot more about this in my workshop. Today, I wanted to talk about other aspects of protection magic that I haven't really heard talked about in relationship to the topic. And I just wanted to chime in because I've been thinking about it. What usually happens with me is I'll say, okay, I'm going to teach this topic, and then I'll teach it and I'll be like, yeah, but what about this? Or actually, what about this? My mind kind of starts going different places, and I start realizing that, the topic is a lot more intricate and a lot wider, and we can cover a lot more than I had first sort of originally thought. Like I wrote a lunar workbook in 2015, and then I ended up writing like 9 publications about the moon. So here we are, right? Here we are. So I wanted to talk about some other aspects today. I wanted to talk about energy and energetic collaboration. I wanted to speak on the importance of honing in on and discerning our intuition. And I also wanted to touch upon the topic of trauma in protection magic. Now, for you gentle listeners, trauma is going to be discussed last because I know that is an activating subject for a lot of folks. So I will announce that with a content warning at the end. Okay? So we will begin with energy. The first topic I wanted to discuss is this idea of becoming an expert of and with your own energy. Really understanding the ins and outs of your own energetic field, like what really drains your energy, what charges your energy, how to know when your energy feels a little bit off or maybe out of alignment, if you have energy leaks, if there are others' energies or other folks who are impacting your energy in a way, right? And this means understanding how it feels to have a clear energy field with your energy intact. I have this affirmation and it works like a charm. I'll often say, I call back all my energy, right? Because my energy might be, raveled up in some phone conversation from a week ago, or like sort of in email world or whatever, hanging out at a coffee shop I went to, a couple days ago to pick up a to-go, whatever. So I call back my energy. I release all energy that is not my own, or that is not useful to me. And of course, you can do this in any order. If you want to release your energy first, Release your energy on your exhale. Release your energy out of your energetic field with your breath, your awareness, your intention. Allow it to either be returned from where it came or just allow it to transform into something neutral or better. And then I say, I am grounded and centered within myself. And you can do that 5 times a day. You could do it once every few days, but really calling back your energy, affirming that all of your energy is your own, all of the energy in your body is useful to you, and grounding into yourself, becoming your own energetic anchor is very useful, a very useful practice. Becoming an expert of your own energy also means understanding what practices you can develop to keep your energy clear and safe. It means knowing what parts of your body or parts of yourself can be the most sensitive and figuring out how to keep those areas clear and practicing ways to dispel and transmute energy in the moment. You know, one thing that popped into my head right now that I wanted to share about experimenting with your energy is thinking about this idea of like an energetic elimination diet. I know that the word diet is activating to people. So I just want to explain what I mean. You know, when there's an elimination diet, when someone's sensitive or trying to figure out where their food allergies are, you know, it's this process of elimination of like, okay, I'm going to take out this kind of food or this kind of food to sort of see what is making me be allergic, right? What is creating an allergic reaction. I wonder if, you know, during this month of October, if it would help folks to try to think about eliminating one or more things that drain your energy, or at least not letting it take up space. You all know what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about social media, right? Like, I think that is a really, really big energetic drain for a lot of us. And I think that maybe we don't completely eliminate it, but maybe we only go on once a day, or maybe we only go on every other day, or whatever it is. For some folks, it's maybe the news cycle, whatever is the top thing that you can discern that is draining your energy, that you can control, and that you can say, no, thanks, I'm maybe not going to do this that much. Maybe you start there, and maybe you try it for the next few weeks and sort of see what happens to your energy, how you feel, so on and so forth. So maybe think about that as a place to begin. Or you can just keep a log of where you feel drained, after what activities, where you notice yourself feeling really good, what kind of activities boost your energy, right? So thinking about that. The practice that I recommend to try every day, if you can, when you're first beginning to work with protection, with protecting your energy, is in the morning, do a brief meditation where you clear your energy with your breath and with speech. I shared just a minute ago my affirmation. Maybe you come up with an affirmation of your own. And then you ground, which means that you can connect to the earth, to gravity. You can create a golden cord with your imagination, moving out of your hips or the base of your spine, and you can anchor. You can anchor to the earth. Some folks suggest anchoring down into the earth, like going past the earth's crust. Whatever feels right for you, you can ground and you can anchor. Then you can create some kind of energetic protective shield. Like, it can be a bubble. You can use your breath to like blow out a bubble. You can imagine some kind of protective bubble or shield. Sometimes I'll use a color. Like lately, I've been using like sort of a nice orange Sherper color, like a sunset kind of. Some folks use symbols. I know other witches who will call in helpers or guides. When you do this, you are beginning a collaboration with your energy, you're beginning to consciously program your energy and see what works for you. Throughout the day, if your energy starts to feel thrown off, you can then figure out how to realign, or you can figure out how to transmute any energy in your energetic field that you would like to leave it. I'll briefly use an example from my own life. Nowadays, because of the quarantine, really the only time I will leave my house consistently, daily, is I'll walk my dogs around the neighborhood and then I'll go on a run, obviously with a mask, obviously social distanced. Of course, wear a mask, practice social distancing. We still have a pandemic happening now. So for whatever reason, I'm really sensitive to dogs barking. And I live in LA, which is like dog city, right? So every time I'm out, especially when I'm out on a run, I can be in my energy, but I'll get thrown off if there's like a big dog barking at me. I'll get thrown off if there's a little dog barking at me, like a chihuahua or something like that, to be real. So my nervous system will get a little activated, and I can actually feel where I will get energetically affected. So when that happens, when I can feel that in my body, I will pause. I will stop. I will breathe into that area. Sometimes I'll even like take my hand and place it over that area, or sort of vigorously like rub it or pass my hand over the skin. I'll move the activated energy through my system and out of my system using a combination of visualization and breath. Then I'll put my bubble back up, I'll ground again, and I'll keep moving. That's my process that I've figured out over time. You get to figure out your own process in the moment. It could be affirmations, it could be shaking, movement. Feel free to experiment. Feel free to really be like, what works? Is it deep belly breaths? Is it like shaking the area? Is it a stretch? What is it when I feel activated, right? The next steps, I think, with that is to really befriend that part of your body that ends up being super sensitive, where your anxiety sort of goes to, where you tend to hold and store nervous or activated energy, or energy that might not be yours. If it's your tummy, then your tummy is going to become your best friend. You are going to listen to that area. You're going to take salt baths, and you're going to exfoliate that area. You're going to allow that sensitive area to talk to you and give you information. And you'll begin to get more information the more that you listen and the more that you tune into it. That sensitive area might even tell you what it needs to be protected, or what it needs to feel a bit more aligned. You might even figure out that that's an aspect of your intuition, that area, right? Of course, you could have multiple areas of your body that give you information, or that kind of hold energy. So tune into the parts of your body that wish to give you information, and try to listen with compassion and see what comes up. So thinking about where our intuition lives, how our intuition shows up in our body, I wanted to speak a little bit just about intuition. I mean, I'll be speaking a lot about intuition throughout this whole podcast. Obviously, it's one of the subjects that I think I don't get tired of, because it changes and transforms, and we've all got it, and we've all got to work with it, and we've all got to listen to it. And I think it's a really fascinating aspect of being a human being, of being a magical creature, right? So I wanted to talk a little bit about intuition. When we can discern when our intuition is communicating with us, and when we listen to our intuition and respond to our intuition accordingly, it is easier for us to stay protected. Many, many people I've worked with or I know have a sort of physical cue, which is how and where their intuition shows up. One person in one of my workshops once shared that it was their thighs, the tops of their legs. Another person shared that this is a really cool one, when they are shuffling their tarot cards to give readings, their hands will start tingling in a special way, and they'll know when it's time to stop. I think that's really cool. Hair on the back of your neck, maybe your third eye opens, and on, right? It shows up for different people in different places, and also it sometimes changes, right? So in general, this physical cue does feel different than anxiety. It is giving you information in a less reactive way, in a way that's easier to discern. Begin to notice these physical cues and notice when they show up for you and where. What are you doing? What messages are there? Take a few deep breaths, pause if you can, and tune in, right? What do you think the information coming through is about? Write it down. Maybe you keep a log in the notes app in your phone, right? Really sort of start tracking, right? Really start seeing what patterns show up with you and how your intuition comes in somatically. Obviously, that's one way our intuition comes in. That is not the only way. There are so many different ways that our intuition shows up for us. We are all incredibly intuitive, and that intuition and how it shows up, it's unique to every single individual, and it is naturally a part of us. It is part of our innate natural intelligence. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to force it. It is just there, no matter what. I teach this class called Elemental Intuition, where we work with the elements and the minor arcana in the tarot to develop aspects of your intuition and to also become more intimate with the four suits of the minors through the four elements. And in the class, or really like all the time, I'll say, notice you're noticing. Notice what you're drawn to. See if there's any information there for you. See how your awareness changes when you are engaged fully in what you feel drawn to. For one person, it could be music. For another, it's plants. It goes on and on and on. Think about what it feels like to really want to engross yourself and engage yourself in something that in exchange opens up your awareness, opens up different levels of your consciousness. Another intuitive building reflection exercise to try that literally everyone I speak to can relate to is looking backwards. Every single person I have ever spoken with can remember at least one time in their life where they had a particular feeling about something or someone and it did not pan out so well, right? Like someone will be like, I knew we shouldn't have blah, blah, blah. Or I knew that this wasn't going to be the best idea. This isn't a blame game, by the way. This is a way for us to gather information about the times where we felt like something maybe was off and we didn't follow that inclination. So spend some time journaling about that situation or situations. How did the alarm show up for you? How did it show up for you? Then reflect on why you did the thing anyway. Again, I'm not here to blame anyone or shame anyone. We're getting information. Did it look good on paper? Was it related to peers or colleagues or family? Was it related to appearances or how you might appear if you said yes or said no, right? I'm asking you this because identifying the blocks to listening to or following through on our intuition is key. Often, what will stop us from proceeding with or listening to our intuition is an aspect of ourselves that needs more attention, needs some awareness, and maybe even some healing, right? Maybe it's self-doubt. Maybe we don't trust ourselves. This can happen a lot with intuition because our intuition comes from within, usually. Usually we are the only one experiencing an intuitive message, right? So if situations appear to be in quotes good or okay or in quotes normal, right? Like on the outside, we will end up trusting that over our own senses, over the ways in which our intuition comes in. I mean, the blocks here can go on, right? Maybe we really want human connection and intimacy, so you keep a certain friendship or you date a certain person and so on and so forth, right? Maybe we're super conflict averse and we don't want to upset anyone or rock the boat, right? In our place of work or in our family or wherever, right? And this is where we need to sort of peel back the layers, really identify, what we feel uncomfortable around, where we need to practice self-advocacy, upholding our boundaries, saying no thank you, right? Every single person has their own particular set of, reasons why we might not choose ourselves or listen to our intuition. So be really compassionate to yourself as you explore. Like, this is a process and it takes time and it takes patience, right? But it's easy. It's easy when you can look back. And, it's also, I think, a really important piece of protection magic. Believe it or not, even though I haven't really spoken about protection magic in this process, because if you can trust yourself and if you can make particular decisions for yourself based on how your energy feels, based on your intuition, there's less of a chance that later on you will have to be performing a binding under a dark moon. You know what I mean? So if we can sort of start in the slower, quieter moments, and listen to those red flags, listen to when our intuition is saying, hey, maybe we don't do this thing with this person in this place. Maybe we say thank you, but no thank you, right? It might cause us to be in a more aligned place, and it might help us in the long term. Okay, gentle listeners, the last little piece I briefly wanted to touch upon in today's little protection magic primer or musings is about trauma. So now trauma can be an activating subject. So if you feel like now is the time to turn this podcast off, please do so. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next week. Before I go on, I have to say, as always, if something does not resonate with you here, that's beautiful. That's okay. Take what you need, leave the rest. I am not a professional trauma therapist. I am someone who lives with symptoms of trauma, which include a dysregulated nervous system. For the past 4 years, I have focused on healing those symptoms through a range of modalities and therapies. TRE, EMDR, mindfulness, breath work, movement, lots of other things I won't go into here. Currently, I'm also in trainings to become a hypnotherapist. I'm also taking trauma classes to supplement that. So I'm really speaking here as a student and also as a subject. I'm very much in process with it. I just am like in it. I'm reading a lot of books. I'm doing a lot of exercises around it. So I've been thinking about it a lot. I think we need to be talking about it more. I think we need to be, normalizing it a bit more as it impacts and influences so many, right? So the topic of trauma and protection magic ended up coming up for me as I was preparing to teach a class on protection magic last spring, because I realized the few books I had read on protection magic did not address trauma. And I was like, well, trauma and protection magic really overlap, right? Because these are about feeling safe, about being safe in the body, about being regulated, or about being dysregulated or not feeling safe, right? There's a lot of overlap there. And of course, I thought about how so many of the layers of our lives create trauma, right? There's like the politics of trauma, how trauma will impact and influence us based on identity or race or different body types or gender expression, and so on and so forth, right? Like, for example, I talk about this in the class briefly. Part of my protection magic as a cis white woman is doing what I can to protect people who are more vulnerable to harm, because unfortunately we live in this world where people will have less access to, feeling safe due to class or race or gender, geographical location. I mean, many, many different things. It's very complex. It's intersectional, right? So that kind of has to be part of our protection magic, as well as just understanding the context of our identity within these themes, right? And I also have been thinking about how healing trauma, or the symptoms of trauma, right, can help us become friendlier with our energy and helps us to trust our intuition more, because sometimes trauma can be a block to accessing feelings of safety, or feeling like we can access our intuition, or we can be in our body with more ease. And it can also make us feel distrustful or not trust our intuition, because sometimes the symptoms of the trauma, the dysregulated nervous system, so on and so forth, it can be a specific kind of filter. And it might not be always an accurate filter. It might make us defensive. It can amplify or distort what is actually happening, right? Like me when the dog barks, right? It's a dog barking, but I'm like jumping out of my skin. Like the little chihuahua on my run is like a ghost with claws coming for me. It is a 5-pound chihuahua barking at me, but my nervous system just kind of will respond in a way that's a bit extreme, right? It can pull us out of our energy, quite frankly. It can make it difficult to ground back in and center to ourselves and discern our own intuition, right? The other thing I really want to say is someone who lives with symptoms of trauma and manages it. Hello, hi, I manage it. And who is intuitive and who considers themselves a psychic. I am in no way saying that living with the symptoms of trauma or CPTSD or PTSD does not mean you cannot be a psychic or intuitive. It's really the contrary. You are intuitive no matter what, right? Before I began healing my nervous system, in some ways, I was more stereotypically psychic than I am now. Like, I could tell you what your crush's moon sign was in a reading. Like, to be honest, I'm not necessarily interested in being that kind of reader now. My clients, if you're listening, I am really, you know what kind of reader I am now. So no one asks me things like that, you know. It could be that I don't make myself available to that kind of information now. But I don't want anyone who's listening who is a trauma survivor or who lives with PTSD or any other symptoms of trauma listening to this thinking they aren't intuitive or they can't be intuitive until they are, you know, completely healed or completely can manage their nervous system all of the time. That is not the case. Okay. I just want to say that. So I have been thinking though, like, what does an approach, a trauma-informed approach to protection magic look like? You know, I ended up writing a piece about it in the Many Moons Planner that's coming out for 2021. And it ended up being super long. I couldn't fit it all in. So I have all this overlap. So I will probably write like a longer zine on the subject. But where I'm at with it now is a couple of different parts that I will offer for those of you who are curious about this topic. You know, trauma-informed protection magic could look like slow and steady processes around self-trust and self-advocacy. It could look like creating your own toolkit that work for you, that include breath, grounding tools, anchoring tools, mindfulness processes, exercises that help to strengthen your vagus nerve. You know, Mercury is going to be in retrograde, right? It's you know, this archetype, this planet of communication and travel. So I'm thinking about the vagus nerve, which some practitioners call the communication nerve of the body. So now could be an opportune time to focus on restorative exercises or strengthening exercises for that particular nerve and also for your nervous system. I will link a few books on this topic in the show notes for you if you want to do your own work around that. I think it's really important. And I do want to say, similar to this idea of preemptive protection magic that I talk about, these daily exercises or consistent practices that we do when like everything is fine and that we're neutral and maybe we're even feeling really good. I want to offer that up when you're doing nervous system healing exercises. Doing these exercises every day, doing these practices every day, integrating them into your life when you're feeling really good, similar to like a meditation practice, right? For the times when you don't feel so good, you can lean on them more, right? We're sort of like filling our cup, right? We're restoring ourselves so that it's easier for us to manage when we get dysregulated, right? When we get activated. I also really think that trauma-informed protection magic looks like developing a strong sense of consent for yourself and for your needs. Allowing yourself to say no. Acknowledging and observing when you catch yourself in a fight, flight, freeze, fawn state, and applying mindfulness, breath, energy clearing practices to soften, to thaw out without judgment, without blame, right? Because so often it's the feeling about the thing that ends up making ourselves contract even more, making ourselves, freeze even more or be in a kind of battle zone with ourselves even more. And observing without judgment, understanding this isn't your fault, understanding that this is a response, I think is really important. And also really thinking about building trust, going back to, the intuition exercise, acknowledging the places where you maybe need to work a little bit more on self-trust, really watching for when you tend to bypass yourself or your emotions or gaslight yourself. I think trauma survivors are so incredible because they're so resilient. We are so resilient, right? We have made it through so much. And also what that can kind of unfold as is a sort of powering through, right? Is a sort of like, I'm just going to get through this. I'm just going to, head down. I'm just going to push through, I'm just going to keep going, right? Whereas if we sort of acknowledge, hey, I'm exhausted, or hey, this doesn't feel super in alignment with me, we can soften more. We can act in reconciliation with ourselves. We can widen into self-trust more because we can trust to pause, to rest, to acknowledge, and act in the spirit of what we need, coming from a place of self-compassion, self-care, self-love, self-protection, right? So taking the stance of believing yourself, committing to listening to what you need in specific moments, and really noticing what activates you and figuring out strategies to handle or manage those specific situations, which of course, over time, eventually helps to develop self-trust. It helps us to locate our energy. It helps us to listen to our intuition and trust ourselves to make decisions. So it ends up being another way that we can explore what trust feels like, what feeling safe feels like. And I think that's actually a super vital aspect of trauma-informed protection magic. I hope I've given you a more unorthodox way of thinking about protection magic this week. Obviously, there's so much more to trauma, obviously more political context, the specifics of different kinds of the actual protection magic rituals and cord cutting and clearing and magical tools and all of these things, right? So many that I've actually thought of, like, I should just write my own book on this. I'm probably not going to write a book, but I'll probably write a zine. Next week, I will be back with more tarot talk. If you like this podcast, please subscribe. Please give this 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend. Caring is sharing. Moonbeaming is brought to you by Modern Women. Your host is Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. It is edited by Caitlin George Parker. The music is by Will Owen and myself. Until next week. Witches in the voting booth, witches studying for the bar.